So pleased to meet everybody. My name is Matt Neal. I'm going to talk to you today about modernizing legacy systems and creating differentiated software for a data and AI-driven future. So that's a mouthful and a long title, but basically what I'm going to try and do is share some practical tips on how you start to organize and think about transforming your business to get the most out of generative AI. So my background prior to working at Endava was IBM and EY. And Watson, I think, is probably about 10 to 15 years old now. So this is about taking a long-term view. What are some practical tips and how do you go about organizing to get the most out of this? Okay. So I'm going to start with a quick example. So I've put into ChatGPT, how do I leverage generative AI in the energy industry? So you might not be able to see it, but it's whirring away, pages and pages of generic chat. Okay. So plug into energy markets, smart energy systems, dynamic pricing, predictive maintenance, storage, smart energy storage management, carbon capture and climate, so on and so forth, pages and pages. Okay. So I think that the learning here is if only it were that simple. Okay. So this is hoovering up stuff from the internet and spewing it back to us. The challenge we have is how do you connect your systems and your data to actually turn it into specific examples and specific ways of moving your business forward. And you can't plug into the internet to do that. Okay. So whilst the future has already begun and AI is happening, and we might be able to use some chatbots to speed up our expenses or some chatbots to improve our field services efficiency. What I think we need to think about is a longer term roadmap to enable the business, to unlock the business to be able to leverage this. And, you know, if you think about some of the things we saw in the last couple of weeks with robots serving drink at Tesla, I guess the mindset is like, what is the ambition and how do we set up for bigger uses of generative AI? So, and the reason for that, I guess, in the industry, it's facing unprecedented disruption if you compare to other industries. And lots of industries have been through this cycle. So carbon net zero, societal cost of living, war, kind of customers owning their own energy, and probably one of the biggest things is the convergence of IT and OT. So that concept of the technology around drones, robots, automating physical assets, getting better and better and better and better. Okay. I think the other feature of this industry is it's data rich. You know, there are millions of data points that come off a wind turbine every year. So you add all of the assets, all of the data points, all of the physical data and the digital data. That is a huge amount to deal with. And you need to be able to capture that if you're going to leverage generative AI. Also, legacy systems. So Gartner say 24% of most company systems are 5 years old, you know, or over 10 years old, 54% over 5 years old. If we're honest, in the energy industry, it's probably an average age of 40. You know, some of these systems have been written in coding languages that nobody even understands anymore. So there's a big legacy system challenge faced by all of us. However, there is significant opportunity. If we can unlock this and if we can take a pragmatic approach to unlocking your business and your technology, then we can leverage the data. So a slightly more practical reflection on this. If you think about the mobile phone, so there would have been a Nokia which had snakes on it and a nice sleek style, but fairly low power, fairly low functionality. That progressed to the smartphone where you had the internet, and the internet was a big digital transformation and you could access various data. What we're now talking about is a smartphone that can connect to physical devices, that can instruct your home, that can stream live music, that needs significant compute power and significant data, but also connectivity to physical things. So that's the way, you know, we like to think about it. And that's that is the power of Gen AI. And once you get that connectivity to physical things, this industry has the ability to seriously transform itself. And once you have the compute power to process that level of data, then you're in a position to really transform. Yep. How do you do that? So it's very simple, but very practical. So Gartner talk about looking at your technology estate across 3 layers. And this is relevant to if you work in finance, if you're in sales and marketing, if you're in R&D, if you're out in the field, if you're an engineer. So some systems are what we would call innovative capabilities, data or software. So those are things where you're creating new, predictive maintenance, drones flying over power lines to spot vegetation growth. Some systems are differentiated capabilities. And by that, they mean what is unique to your industry. So what do you do and what systems or data solutions do you need that other industries don't use? And then core capabilities, or they used to call it systems of record, is things like finance, expenses, HR joiners and leavers, procurement systems, treasury management systems, so on and so forth. So that is the stuff that is probably not going to change the game for your business. It's common to every business. So the first tip is you need to be looking at the systems that have differentiated capabilities and innovative capabilities. So you don't need a chatbot to make your travel and expenses 2 minutes faster. Well, maybe you do, but it's probably not going to contribute to the energy transition, right? So what are those systems that we really need to think about and care about? There's then a practical set of methods for modernizing that estate and giving yourself access to the compute power and the data. So one is modernize existing systems. So whether they're written in old coding languages, whether they're on-premise versus in the cloud, you need to be thinking about how do you bring them forward so that you can plug them into large language models. Okay? The other one is migrate. So if a lot of the systems are on-premise or not in the cloud, you either need a private cloud or a cloud scenario to get the sort of compute power we talked about in that next generation smartphone if you want to leverage the Gen AI technologies. The other one is sunset. So you may simply have software or data solutions that are no longer useful, or that simply, there are features that are covered elsewhere. So you need to be thinking which applications do you need to get rid of? And finally, build. So this is one of the areas of debate. In a world where there's proliferation of software, when do you create your own intellectual property? When do you own a system? When do you build it yourself? And this, I think, is the key to getting access to differentiated or innovative capabilities. So if you think of an example like the music industry. So I was working there probably 25 years ago. They spent 4 or 5 years suing the Napster, iTunes, Spotify, trying to keep the status quo of retail stores, physical product. Okay, if they'd spent that 4 or 5 years trying to develop IP and systems of differentiation and innovation, they may be doing what iTunes and Napster and Spotify are doing today. Now, you maybe say they're very different industries, but in a world of distributed power, where everybody has their own power and shares it in a virtual power plant, it's not impossible to see that sort of disruption could happen in this industry as the technology around physical and software gets closer together. So Gartner also talk about that buy versus build decision. And it's so easy to say, let's outsource this. There are really smart software companies. Let's just let them build something and figure it out, and we'll just pay them a license fee. Now, the way to think about this, again, is back to differentiated versus undifferentiated. So do you need to rebuild your finance ERP to do debits and credits? No. But your smart energy systems, your storage, your customer-facing systems, depending what part of the energy industry you're in, these are the areas you should be seriously considering. Where do we create our own technology versus where do we pay somebody else to license it to us? Okay. So some real world examples. So these are some projects I've worked on in the last 4 years, probably. So battery storage. So we did a project probably 3-4 years ago with one of the battery storage companies to build a peak prediction algorithm using AI and dashboards that then showed customers how much money they were saving on their energy. So this was a B2B solution that helped you manage your manufacturing sites or your other assets. When we look at that, the success of that project was built around a large amount of manual work coding those algorithms. In today's world, that probably could have been done in 4 or 5 weeks with Gen AI. The one in the middle is a current project, so asset modeling. So this is about an engine which predicts the future profitability of power stations, and people use it before they invest in new infrastructure. So as you can imagine, in today's world, that needs to take into account renewables, weather, geopolitical changes, lots of variables. So in this scenario, the client had a 30-year-old piece of software, which everybody was used to. They loved their Excel downloads to put into their 5-year MPV cash flow models, right? That was written in a coding language called Fortran, which pretty much nobody uses anymore. So we had to take that, recode it, move it into the cloud, and then rebuild the logic of that engine, okay? Even when you get there, you then have a change management challenge to convince all the banks and the various other people that use it to assess those investments why the new model and new logic is better. But that's a great example where generative AI, once you have that in the cloud, once you have that logic, can effectively automate and improve that decision making. And finally, the sort of future nirvana is the Tom Cruise Minority Report digital twin, where you have a real-time view of all of your operational data, and you can make decisions and you can have smart technology to do that. That, I think, is where we should think about moving to. But to do that, we need to go through the basic steps that we talked about of modernizing and unblocking your company. So finally, if you're in the process of modernizing and unblocking those technologies and data solutions, it's going to give you access to leverage that at another level. Now, one of the challenges then is there's loads of ideas. So very practically, a shortage of ideas has never been an issue in digital transformation. So what we would recommend is some form of prioritization approach, which focuses on which things are ready to do and which things drive the most benefit. We'd also recommend clustering those ideas. And again, being really tough that you're not just improving the CEO's expenses with a chatbot, you're actually working on systems of differentiation or innovation and ideas that will change your ability to enhance the energy transition or beat your competitors. So finally, this concept of a set of ideas, some prioritization, clustering that, and working agilely and structurally over a period of time to achieve and unblock your organization. So hopefully that's a helpful set of practical tips to think about transforming your business. It's not specific, it's not short term, but I think if businesses start to think like this and set up like this, you will have the ability to leverage generative AI and have the ability to get the most out of it. So that's my perspective. Thank you very much.